Hi, my name is Angela Ferris, and this is video 1 of 2 that you'll be watching for Cerner training. So when you first log into Cerner, what you're going to see is this screen here, and you are going to be on your home screen, which is like your message center. And you can get to these screens if you're someplace else in the chart by going to this home button or this message center button. So if I go over to Message Center, what I notice is that I have an inbox summary over to the left, and I'm seeing messages, orders to approve. Maybe I might have some documents that I need to sign because I've saved them previously and they're in a preliminary status. So the way this works is I'm going to go ahead and go to Orders. It kind of looks like an email. I'm going to double click to open one of the orders. And this order would be here maybe because the nurse had entered it because of a verbal or telephone order, and so I would need to sign off on this order. I can see in this screen the patient's name, and if I did not remember the details pertaining to this patient, I would be able to click on this hyperlink and it would take me to that patient's chart. Kind of a quick way to get back there. We can also still see the details, additional information, history, and any comments that were placed on this order. Down here on the action pane, what I'll see is it defaults to approve. If this was not an order that was placed for me, I could refuse, which we'll do that in a moment, and I would have to fill out a reason for refusing. For this order, though, we're just going to leave it on approve and recognize these buttons over on the right. If I were to click next, that would not address any details. It would not sign this order. It would just go to the next order. If I were to click OK and close, it's essentially saying sign and close. And OK and next is sign and next. So I'm going to click OK and next because I want to sign this order and I want it to open the next order. So now we're looking at the second order that was in our list. And for this one, just to show you what it looks like if I need to refuse, maybe I need to refuse this because this order was sent to me by mistake. Maybe they chose the wrong provider name to send it to, physician name. Also, sometimes what'll happen is maybe this was the incorrect dose, and I didn't say to give this dose, so I'm going to refuse this one. Please note that this does not discontinue this medicine if that was the case and this was the incorrect dose. Once I refused this order, I would need to go into this patient's chart and discontinue that dose and put in the correct dose, put in the order for the correct dose. So I'm going to click refuse. And I can say, does not match given order, I did not give this order, whatever is pertaining to your particular situation. I'm going to go ahead and say other see comment, and maybe I could leave a comment here and say gave order for hydromorphone. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click OK and close. It's like sign and close, and it just brings me back to this Message Center inbox summary screen. If I had a document to sign, it would be in here because maybe I used phone dictation. It might be that I have a document that was sent back to me from HIM asking me for medical records, asking me to modify and add some information, and I would be able to click on those documents and modify from here and also sign those documents from here. Another item I would like to show you is the My Experience button. Some of you will have it in your button list up here in your toolbar, but mine is hiding in this little area between the buttons. I'm going to click My Experience. And when Cerner originally just first opened up for us, we were in the home page. If I wanted to change that and say, well, I would really like when I log into Cerner to see the message center or maybe my patient list instead, you can change that view, your default view for when you first log into Cerner. You also, over to the right, have the ability to select what your provider view will look like. So as you change and go on rotations, you can, it's optional, come in here and change your view in My Experience. It doesn't leave out any information if you choose a different view. It just organizes the information in a way that would make more sense for that particular role. And then you would want to click Save if you changed anything. I'm just going to leave it as is and go back to Patient List. So when you initially set up your Cerner account, you're going to want to develop your patient list. This will just be a one-time thing unless you need to change your group often, something like that, change your patient list often. It's uncommon that you would need to do that. So the way you would develop a patient list is you would click on this wrench, and then you would click New. We're going to develop a list by location, but you can develop a custom list. You can develop a provider group list, relationship. We're going to choose location. And next, we're going to click on this little tiny plus, and we're going to go all the way down to University of Louisville Hospital. And we're not going to click the entire hospital because that would start to develop a patient list based on the entire hospital, which will freeze the system. So we're going to click on the little plus. And then for the sake of this class, we're just going to choose ULH 6 East and ULH 7 East. These little nursing hats icons represent nursing units. And then what we can do is we can also enter discharge criteria. So if I only want to display patients that have not been discharged, that'll help my list to stay a reasonable size. It is giving us a name for the list that is based on the units that we chose. We could delete that and develop a different name for our list if we preferred. I'm going to leave it as is for now. I'm going to click Finish, and this makes this patient list available. So I'm going to grab that patient list by highlighting it and using my arrow to make it active. And you can have multiple lists that are available, and you can have several tabs that develop from your active list. Just depends on what you want to see. And instead of deleting these, we just highly recommend, if you don't want to use the list any longer, just bring it over to available. If you were to delete a list that was developed for an entire group, it does delete the list for the entire group. So we want to make sure that we just make that active list, bring it over to available if we don't want to see it any longer. And we don't want to delete that unless it's a custom list that we've developed for only ourselves. So now I have my active list. I'm clicking OK. And now I'm seeing the patients on 6 East and 7 East. If I wanted to edit this and remove a list or remove a location from this list, what I can do is utilize this properties icon. And oftentimes we use a corny little saying when we are training Cerner, hover to discover. And so if you hover over these little icons, it kind of gives you an idea of what these icons are going to do for us. So we're going to click on the properties icon. Looks like a little hand holding an envelope. And what we can do is go back into our locations, go all the way down to U of L, and we can uncheck 7 East, for instance. Notice it changes the title of my list, and once I click OK, my screen refreshes, and it will only show me 6 East patients, which looks like they were all on 7Es, so I'm going to grab that 6Es back real quick. Okay. Now, if you wanted to develop a custom list so that you could delete the list later and it wouldn't have an impact on anyone else, sometimes people like to develop custom lists so that they can see patients that have only been discharged in the last 2 weeks, something like that, so that they can follow up on maybe some results. But you can develop a custom list by clicking on your wrench. You click on New. We're going to click on Cut. We're going to leave it alone because it's already highlighted and clicked on Custom. We're going to click Next. And then what we can do is type our name. So my name is Angie. You can title it whatever you would prefer to title it. And then I'm going to click Finish. Move this over to the active list and click OK. And what can happen here is I can go into this little green guy, looks like a green alien with a starburst in his hand or something, a sun. And this is going to help me to be able to add a patient to this list. Let's see. I'm going to click on this little green guy and show you how to add a patient to your list. And normally you would want to search by FIN number. And this is important because the FIN number is going to be giving you the exact encounter, the exact visit that you're looking for. Today I'm going to search by last name. And it gives me all of the names that have the last name at the top, and whichever one I'm highlighted on, it's going to open the encounter that it's highlighted on in the bottom. So if this patient had multiple visits, it might be that it's opening the top encounter, which could potentially be a pre-admission into like Brown Cancer Center, or if you're at Jewish Hospital, it could be a pre-admission into Fraser. So if you ever have to search by name or by medical record number, really pay attention to which encounter you're opening. I'm going to double click on this encounter to open it, or to add it to, to add it to my patient list. And so now I've developed a custom patient list and I've added a patient to that list. Oftentimes what will happen is you'll be asked to have a patient list proxied to you, or you'll ask for someone to proxy a patient list. The way you can do that is click on that properties icon again with the hand holding the envelope, and notice that it has another tab up here next to location patient list tab. So I'm going to click on the proxy tab, and what we can do is click new, and you can either type in a group if that's the list that you would like to, if you would like to proxy it to a group, or I can proxy this list to a provider. I'm going to type test, comma, for my provider's last name and find a test provider in here. So I'm proxying the list, the ULH7 East list, to this hospitalist, and I'm going to give them maintenance access. If I give them full access, it allows them to delete the list for the entire team. Maintain will allow them to add patients and remove patients from the list, but not delete the entire list for the entire team. And then read is just read only, so they can't add or remove patients from a list. We're going to give maintain, and then you're going to want to type in an end date and time. I'm going to click apply and then OK, and that is how you proxy the patient list. Now, I don't have a way to show you what that looks like as far as receiving the list because I would have to log into that hospital list, log in to show you. But where you're going to be able to find any lists that are proxy to you is underneath this wrench icon. It'll be located in your available list. And in parentheses, it'll have the name of the person who proxied that list to you. And then you'll be able to highlight that list and bring it over into your active list. If the patient that you were trying to open a chart on was not located in your patient list yet, maybe they hadn't been registered, you can find them a different way. You're able to go over to this field in the upper right-hand side where it says name, and you can either search by name or use this little drop-down to search by medical record number or by FIN. And remember, this FIN is the best way to search because it's going to search by the visit, by the encounter. You also have the ability to use this recent drop-down, and this is going to show me the last 5 patients charts that I've opened, and that's helpful because it's a really quick way to get back to a patient's chart if I was just now remembering, oh, I need to add such and such order to that patient, and it saves you a couple of clicks instead of going back to your patient's list. If you're already in a different patient, you can just drop this down and open an additional patient. I'm going to click on that patient to open the chart. And this is just giving me a duplicate name alert. Normally, I would really want to pay attention to this because maybe there's 2 Brian Smiths on the unit. But this is because all of our trained patients have the same last name. So I'm going to click OK. And now the patient's chart opens. Here's our patient name. It is a hyperlink. And if I were to click on the patient name, what I will see is some details. I will also be able to see the Social Security number if it's been typed in. And this can be helpful if you need to run a CASPER report for controlled substances. And you can actually copy and paste that into your documentation. And click Cancel here. These toolbars are customizable, so if you want to move buttons around or add buttons, you're able to do that. A few buttons to review. We have this calculator button that people find extremely helpful. It has different formulas in there already for you. And some of these buttons will help you, or are specific to nursing. Patient preferred pharmacy is where we will put our patient's preferred pharmacy for e-prescribing. And typically the nursing staff does that, but we can do that. We can definitely confirm that it's the correct pharmacy. And we're not going to click it right now, but we have this exit button here. And this is very important because it will help you to exit Cerner properly so that you don't have your account stuck out there in the cloud world, in the server world. So when we do exit Cerner, we always want to use this button to exit Cerner and not the X up here. Sometimes if we use the X, we have a session that gets hung out there in that cloud, and it causes us to have to call the help desk in order to get them to close out that session. Nobody wants to call the help desk, so we try not to do that. The other pieces that are in this patient banner bar up here, we would have a care team if we had placed that care team in here. We would have an isolation order if we had it, the isolation status if we had an isolation order placed. We have a level of care, age, date of birth, gender. We also have the medical record number, and this location is kind of where you know, am I on the right encounter? Am I on the right visit? And we can, if we weren't on the right visit, here's a hyperlink that we could actually click on, and the other visits would be listed here under visit type, and we would be able to click on the appropriate visit. If we said, hey, you know what, this location actually says Brown Cancer Center, and the patient is located physically on ULH7 East, then we would want to come in here and make sure that we're on the ULH7 East encounter. We have our FIN number, our encounter number, and if the nurse has documented the weight and BMI, we'll see it here. If the code status order has been placed, we'll see it here. We have our attending and our allergies. Right now, we're defaulting over here on our menu on Provider View, and we also have all of these other tabs that we could go into. These are kind of like, if this was a binder, these would be the tabs in the binder. We are currently on this patient summary tab, but we also have these additional tabs: inpatient workflow, ambulatory workflow, discharge workflow. So keep in mind, even within one screen, like Provider View, we might have additional tabs that we can utilize as well. This Provider View tab is where you will primarily live when you're charting and viewing patient information. Right now we're on Patient Summary tab, and I'll show you a few ways that you can customize this screen. And once you customize this screen, it stays that way for every login for every patient that you've logged into. One of the ways you can customize is you can use this hamburger button and you can view your layout. It's, you know, in 1 column, 2 columns, or 3 columns. Right now we're in the 3-column layout. We can use the drag and drop tool. We can expand all of these components, and then that's a toggle button. So then once we click expand all and we click collapse all, we can see a little better what options we have in here and how we would want to maybe organize this information. And we also have a components list. So each one of these boxes represent some of this wording. So I have a labs box, I have a medications box. And if there was something on here that I knew that I wasn't going to use, I can actually unclick it so that it didn't use up valuable real estate in this view. I'm going to go ahead and turn on this drag and drop feature. It's a tool, so it has a check mark once you click on there. And we'll want to come back and uncheck that. Otherwise, it'll keep grabbing boxes and cause a little bit of frustration. So I'm going to grab this new order entry box with my mouse, and notice how it's providing a dotted box for me to drop. So if you don't see that dotted box, it's not going to drop it in the right area. I'm going to go ahead and drop my new order entry box over to the left. And then what I can do is I can turn off that drag and drop button. I'm going to go ahead and expand all, and now I've reorganized my screen. You can also say, yeah, I want this patient information box, but I want this to default closed. So maybe I want to sometimes come over here and open the box, but for now I want it to default closed. You also have the ability to change the color theme. So if I want something to stand out, I can change the color of that particular component as well. One of the things you can do in this new order entry box is grab shared favorites. So we're able to see our own favorites, go to home folders, or grab shared favorites. So if I wanted to see Dr. Dew's favorites, I can type his name in there. And then I would be able to see his orders that are in individual folders, but I could also see his order sets by clicking my plan favorites. And order sets are indicated by these painter's palette or pizza box looking icons. This is telling me this is going to be an order set, which in Cerner are called power plans, as opposed to a single order. And we'll go into how to save a favorite order a little while later. Now we're going to go into the inpatient workflow tab. And here, what we can do is customize by pulling up different components over on the left. So I can organize this screen by pulling up the way I would normally review a patient's chart and do an assessment. And once I organize these the way I would like to see them, what I'll do is I'll go through each one of these components that I need to address. And once I add that information, down here at the bottom, I'll be able to create my note. And everything that I've entered throughout this process is pulled into my note. So essentially, as we go through this next piece of training, just keep in mind that we are actually creating our note. If there is something over here on the left that you don't need when you're admitting a patient or you're using your patient workflow, what you can do is use that hamburger button again, and you can see these components and uncheck a component that maybe you don't feel like you're going to need or use in this particular screen. And once you uncheck that component, it will uncheck it for the remainder of any patients that you log into from then on. So we would want to review the home medications, and then the way we can complete the med rec is over here on these hyperlinks. Notice that the meds history has already been completed by the nurse. We can tell because this meds history has a check mark beside it. If the nurse had not completed it yet, there would be an exclamation point. It's always up to the physician to complete the med rec, the admission med rec. So we're going to click on this hyperlink to open that admission med rec screen. And what we're going to notice is we have some medication names on the left. We can tell where they have come from by hovering over these icons. So when I hover to discover, I notice that when I have this icon, it is from an inpatient. So maybe this patient had been admitted from the ED, and this was possibly given in the ER. So keep that in mind, that can happen. And then we have this little scroll, a paper scroll icon. That means that the nurse documented it, the medication from the history. And these little star icons mean that the order has not been reconciled by pharmacy. In the center, we have a green triangle, and any item that is clicked under the green triangle is going to be continued as an inpatient med. Any item that is checked under the square is going to be discontinued as an inpatient med. So I'm going to click to continue aspirin. And I'm going to discontinue this metoprolol once it allows me to. And notice that I have to reconcile all of the medications, or my reconcile and sign button isn't available. I also have these two buttons available over on the bottom left. One, missing required detail, two, required unreconciled orders. So if I were to click those, it kind of brings up and highlights what is it that I'm missing. So because I'm continuing this aspirin, it wants me to type in a supervising physician. And then I'm going to go ahead and discontinue this order. And now I have one required unreconciled order. I can go ahead and continue that one. So this is showing me, well, you know, we need to give a conversion for this. And I also need to type in my dose or my dose unit in some cases. So keep that in mind. Now I'm going to reconcile and sign. And this is just showing me that I have a VTE prophylaxis regimen that needs to be confirmed for this patient. And I need to make sure the appropriate orders or contraindications are documented. I'm not going to add the orders currently, but that will be something that we would want to keep in mind and get back to. I'm going to click OK. And now what it'll do is just bring us back to that workflow in page. That's what they call these, is workflow in pages. So ambulatory workflow in page, discharge workflow in page. So we're on the inpatient workflow in page. we're using it for admission, but you can also use this for like a progress note and such. We're going to go down to our chief complaint. We're going to type chest pain. And then I'm going to click sign in this component box. I'm going to skip over care team, and for subjective history of present illness, I'm going to type patient complaining of chest pain. And I'm going to save that box, save that component. For review of systems, what we have is we have these handy dandy templates. So if you push the period button on your keyboard, you'll see all types of templates that are customizable. They don't have any patient-specific information in them. So I'm going to go down to Review of Systems Complete. You could also use Review of Systems Resident. And notice it brings in a template for me, and I can edit that however I would need to edit that. So for chest pain, see, we definitely want to delete the no out of there because they are having chest pain. In this documents field, you're able to read through these notes. If you wanted to see maybe a note that was placed in the ER, you could open that note by clicking on the note name. And you'd be able to review that information. For diagnostics, we can review the diagnostics that have been completed. For objective physical exam, we're going to use another template. So we're going to use our dot phrase on our keyboard, and we can also type PE, and that helps us to find our physical exam complete a little faster. So utilizing those dot phrases can really be more efficient than not utilizing them, and you can also develop your own as well. I'm going to go down to the problem list, and here I can add diagnoses. So they already have the diagnoses of chest pain, and it's chronic. I'm going to add a problem of acute chest pain. There. And notice now I have a priority because this is for this visit. I can choose this visit and chronic if it's something that is also chronic. I can go down to intake and output, and this is showing me the last 24 hours. And under new order entry, this is where I can also see my favorites that I could potentially save, all favorites and shared favorites. So the way we searched for Dr. Dew's favorite order sets and orders folders earlier, I can also do that here under shared favorites. We'll get into that a little bit more later. And then histories, I can see problems, procedure history, family history, social history. If I needed to add one, I can go into this hyperlink for histories and add that histories there. Oh, I skipped allergies. So I'm going to go back to allergies. I can review those allergies here and click complete reconciliation to show that I have reviewed those allergies. And now I'm going to go on down and I'm going to create my note. I'm going to choose medicine H&P. And notice that all of the items that I had documented have been pulled into this particular note. My chief complaint is here. I have my history of present illness that's already here. If I were to want to add something to this history of present illness, I might not see my cursor here. And if that's the case, I would need to use this little arrow to insert free text to get a free text field. In some cases, you already have a cursor there, so you don't need to do it, but sometimes you don't have a cursor. Sometimes when we're helping people on the floors, they'll go to insert free text and they accidentally click this X and it removes a component. And you can actually get that back by going up here to your undo button. Notice if I hover, I discover it actually says undo. So if I click that undo button, it brings back my component. We also have this refresh symbol, and it doesn't make sense to use it for history of present illness, but if I go down a little, I see labs, and maybe the nurse says, oh, some of the labs have, returned, have been resulted, and what I can do, if I don't see them here, is I can click refresh, and oftentimes, it'll pull in those labs that have resulted since I had been documenting. I'm going to click Sign Submit to finalize. Save will put this note in a preliminary status. So I'm going to click Sign Submit, and here is where I can see the type of note that I have, the position, the note type list filters position. You'll not need to change that. You'll have your medicine HMP title. You have our name. We are the author. And then we can also save a favorite because we're going to need to forward our notes, our documents to attendings. And so I'm going to search for my attending now. And I want to send this to my attending to sign. So I'm going to make sure I click sign, because otherwise, if I send it to my attending for review, it takes several clicks for them to get to the sign screen. It's not face up. So I'm going to make sure I click sign. And if I star this, it brings that attending over here under my favorites. So I definitely want to do that so I'm not constantly searching for my attending. And now down here, I'm going to click sign to sign this document. If I click refresh, I'm able to see my progress note here, medicine HMP. Now under menu, I'm going to go over to the orders menu tab, show you a few things. Right now I'm displaying all orders 5 days back, but I can drop that down and show a different filter view depending on what I want to see. You can also just see medications. We typically recommend all orders, all statuses when you're originally getting used to using Cerner. And now we're going to go add an order set. So I'm going to click add. We could have done this in that new order entry as well when we were creating our note. But here I'm just going to add an order set. I'm going to add admit orders ULH. And this is the attending that I'm going to put in as my supervising physician. And this order set is simply an admission status order set. So we don't want to add any patient orders to this, like patient head in the bed, ambulate, that type of order, patient care orders. We just want to leave this as it is, and we're going to go ahead and click admit to inpatient, and we're going to have some fields to fill out. This blue circle with white X shows me that I have some required fields, and to open, to be able to add those required fields, to fill them out, sometimes you have to right click and click modify, and then it will open the bottom section for us to fill out. So we know that the reason for our admission is chest pain, and then we want the team to be cardiology, and we know that our attending is that hospitalist attending. and our level of care. And so we're going to choose MedSurg. And then we're going to have the cardiology service. And then we're going to type in the attending physician as well. And now we have satisfied all of the required details. So I'm going to click Orders for Signature and Sign. And we'll address this later. So processing, please refresh. We'll see this quite often. And remember to use your refresh button up here in the upper right of your screen. And now we've completed that order. And we're going to now put in our patient care orders. So we're going to type MedSurg. And we're going to get those admission orders by clicking on the MedSurg order set. This is our supervising physician, so we're going to say yes, that's good. And then click Done. And now we have an order set back here that we're looking at that is a very big order set. We have a couple of different things that I can show you that will pertain to almost any order set. If you want to see what items have been pre-checked, you can use this filter icon, and it'll show you that only these 2 items are pre-checked. And it's a toggle button, so if I click on it again, it gives me all of the options that I might want. We also have this view, which looks kind of like a badminton birdie, but I think it's supposed to be like an eyeball looking. And this is going to show me, when I click on that, maybe what orders are already in the patient's chart compared to what I might be charting, what I might want to order. So it shows me these are the patient care orders that have been already ordered, and they usually back up to the orders that you would be looking at above them. And so throughout this chart, you can see any place that I see that particular color of yellow, that it's showing me, okay, here is, vitals, and maybe my vitals up here, I can, if I wanted to change that, I would uncheck and then continue a different vital. And that's actually a chart review. But okay, so we're going to check full code because we want to order full code, and any item that is checked is what we're ordering. If it's not checked, it's just here for us to order, but it's not being ordered. So we want to check full code. We're going to check vital signs Q4H, and then I'm going to also check bed rest. And now if I were to click my funnel button, I would see that I have several other orders that I'm addressing. If I wanted to add an order that isn't already in this order set, I can use this Add to Phase button. And then I would click Add Order. And maybe I want to search for troponin. And I can do a time study collect. Click Done. And I want this time study to be today, so I can type T for today, and that'll put today's date, and at 2100. I can use this little martini glass icon to drop that down if I need to, so that I can complete the other orders that I would like to order. Let's see. We are going to look for that VTE prophylaxis order set. And notice it's already pre-checked, and it has 2 of those painter's palettes icons. And that's because it's an order set within an order set. And this is within 24 hours, this is a requirement for every patient that it's filled out. That's why we got those 2 warnings coming into the patient's chart, because it's alerting us that we need to fill out the DVT, VTE prophylaxis information. So we're going to click on that order set, and now we're looking at a different order set that's within the admission order set. And then we're back to our admission order set. If I wanted to save this as a favorite power plan so that maybe I fill out 80% of my med-surg admission order sets this way, I use the Save as My Favorite button. And I can rename this. We try to leave the same original name there, but we can add our last name and click OK. And now that will be saved as my favorite. And down here at the bottom, I have two options. I have Plan for Later and I have Initiate Now. So if I were to plan this for later and I wanted the nurse to initiate this once the patient arrives to the unit, or maybe that they're in the ED and there's not a bed available yet, what I would need to do is put in a comment here for the nurse to initiate once the patient arrives to the unit. Otherwise, you'll be getting a call from the nurse about, where are the admission orders, and you'll have to explain, well, you've already put them in, but you want them to initiate them because it's out of their scope of practice to initiate those orders without instruction. And then if I know that the patient's head is actually in the bed, what I can do is Initiate Now. I'm going to click Initiate Now. And then it gives me orders for signature. It's kind of like a review. And then sign. And then I would want to refresh so that I can see the updated version of everything that I've completed. And notice on the left under Med-Surg Admission, it says Initiated. So that's how I know that I've completed the sign of these orders and they are actually being initiated. So that concludes our class, the first video for our training. And I hope you enjoyed the training. Have a great day.